it's a big difference between a crop of trees and a forest. A properly managed forest consists of height and depth. It has got multifaceted. So just imagine if you clear fell a forest, is like removing the mountains, because the surface area is drastically removed. So if you like that photo I showed you earlier, if you imagine if that was just empty flat area, then it would be much smaller than what it in reality is. Because there are mountains and because there are tall vegetation, when it rains, it hits not just the spot on the map, it actually hits a leaf and then runs along the leaf and then on a branch, and then if the bark is thick, like an old tree has, if it's hollow, it gets absorbed. And when it's a hot day, it gets released by the temperature, evaporation, transport evaporation, and it cools the atmosphere down. These are issues that unfortunately the decision makers either have never learned, and the people that work in the bush have never been allowed to learn. It is so sad, in reality, that over those 20 years I have seen a decline in actual knowledge transfer. When they talk about multi-skilled people, they mean people operating a chainsaw and driving a skidder. It doesn't mean that they are multi-skilled. But besides being cynical, the whole point is that if you have got a mixed species healthy forest, and that's what nature does, it doesn't maintain monocultures. Right? So you have got pioneer species that come after a hot event, like a fire runs through the bush, or a massive storm, like we see around the world. Huge storm events, and it blows a lot over. Not everything is blown over, but there is a seed bank in the ground and by some trees, and for some decades, even centuries, you will have the pioneer species like eucalypts and like pine trees themselves. But if you have got an even age crop of 1,000 trees per hectare, it is unable to absorb the water when it rains. It runs off very quickly. And the more often you rotate the plantation and you just treat the soil as dirt, right, to hold the trees up and give it enough fertilizer so to make it grow, you have a very unhealthy and unsustainable practice. And so proper responsible forest management is about site-specific, making decision at what time will you cut down or harvest a tree, or in what areas will you do it because of the sensibility of the water, etc., etc. But you have to come back to what feeds it is the soil. And if you don't look after the soil, you're destroying the environment. And Easter Island is a classic example. New Zealand, in many parts, used to have lots of trees on it. The only good advantage that the Kiwis have got is the island is young. Australia is old. Australia is flat, relatively flat. We haven't got not much volcanic soil. There's some in Scottsdale, there's some between Launceston and Devonport, there's some in the back of Devonport, Ulverston, with beautiful red soil, but there is not all that much of it. That's your class 1 soils. But New Zealand, Brazil, and other parts where you have, and of course in Asia, you've got relatively young soils, and they have got the ability to bounce back at least when they get treated harshly. So proper forestry is about thinking intergenerational, not just for the next 20 years.